I have covered politics for years, and I have never seen what I am seeing this year. It's like we're all trapped in a Netflix series, except the actors don't know they're being filmed. Today's episode is long, it's heavy, and it's not for the faint-hearted. Before we go deep, hit that like button, because this one will leave you shaking your head. Now, let's set the stage. Mr. Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Police, the man who people say almost collapsed yesterday when the bombs started landing at the Madlanga Commission. And look, I don't blame him. If I was carrying this much baggage, I'd need a stretcher too. But before we talk about fainting, let's rewind to how he sounded when he still felt untouchable. Please bring that clip of him boasting.
Some corners against you.
Yes. Those allegations were not only against me, they were against a range of other, I would say, departments, and I would say also the justice system as a whole in the country, as he said it there. Now, in South Africa, we will always treasure and insist that you hear one side, and after you've heard one side, you then hear the other side. And the day one person stands on a podium and say, I suspect so and so of wrongdoing, the same person says, I've investigated. The same person says, I have found something wrong. And the same person prosecutes, in other words, but then at the same time sits as a magistrate and as a judge and says, indeed, something wrong has been found. And then the same person passes judgment. That will be the end of South Africa. And it will crush and destroy the dream that all of us have had for years, struggling for justice in this country. And justice means, among other things, hear the other side. No matter how serious as in this particular instance, the case is, but hear the other side. I'm sitting here waiting for the commission, and I believe and that the president thought things very well, thought things through very well, and I support that. I'm also as patient as anybody else because we need to wait for the other day.
You hear that? Calm voice, smug tone, lecturing us like we're naughty school children. We must hear both sides. Nobody can be investigator, prosecutor, and judge at the same time. Well, thank you, Minister. Very noble, very constitutional. But here's the punchline. When the other side finally spoke, it wasn't a whisper, it was a cannon blast. And suddenly, the Constitution wasn't enough to shield you. Now freeze that photo of Mchunu at the podium. Look at that face. That's the face of a man who thought time was on his side. But as we all know, time has a wicked sense of humor. Because right after his lecture about patience, in walks Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. And my friends, the moment he opened his mouth, the popcorn was ready. He said he went to the National Commissioner. No luck. He went to the Minister. Blocked. He went all the way to Parliament, begging to be heard. Still nothing. Please bring that clip.
I personally reached out to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee as an oversight body to the police work, because I realize it looks like every door I'm knocking, nothing is happening. National Commissioner, please speak to the minister, it's not happening. National Commissioner, check with the president, I'm not getting a feedback. And the next body that I must engage is an oversight body, which is Parliament. I then contacted the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Cameron, myself. I requested him to invite me to the Portfolio Committee. Ordinarily, I was not supposed to be part of the Portfolio Committee. But through my request, he invited me to be part of the Portfolio Committee. it is that portfolio committee where I was able to then express my feelings about this decision in the presence of both the National Commissioner and the Minister. But even that effort failed. Nothing happened as a result. So those are all the efforts that I did.
Did you catch that? Every door I knocked, nothing happened. That's not a man exaggerating. That's a man telling you the system was designed to keep him out. Even when Parliament gave him a chair to speak, it ended in silence. And remember, this is no small officer. This is a general. If generals are ignored, what chance do ordinary detectives have? Now pause. Earlier, the minister told us to wait for the other side. Well, minister, here it is. The day has arrived. Get the popcorn. Because Mkhwanazi didn't just complain about doors being shut. He walked into the commission and dropped dynamite. He said, your associates, minister, were in contact with a syndicate. He said there's evidence, communications, records, testimony. And he said his colleagues are ready to swear under oath. Please roll that clip.
To some degree, the associates, as I referred to here on this paragraph, are associates of the minister. And the very same associate does show communication that seems to suggest that the minister is fully involved in the decision that this syndicate is taking.
Do you accept the responsibility on your part to substantiate fully, not necessarily today, but in the fullness of time, the conclusions you have drawn in that paragraph?
Yes, Commissioners, evidence is there on the record, although some of it will perhaps require to be covered in camera, but the evidence is there that will support my conclusion on this. The individuals, the colleagues, as I said earlier, my July briefing was a collective effort, men and women who are part of the investigation in Gauteng, who knows and they've gathered evidence to support the allegations that we ended up making. And they are going to come before this commission and they're going to present that evidence. We will be able, under oath, to confirm that indeed that is evidence that we've collected. And we have no reason not to believe that it is the real evidence that proves the linkages between the syndicates and the minister himself.
Boom. That's not gossip. That's not Twitter. That's a decorated general saying the Minister of Police is tied into decisions made by a syndicate. And you wonder why Senzo Machunu's knees buckled. If someone said that about me under oath, I'd need paramedics too. Now let's balance this with expertise. Because you might be thinking, how does a whole task team get shut down? How do 121 dockets suddenly vanish into national office? Well, here comes the crime analyst, Habang Bogopa. He explains it better than anyone. He says investigators build strong cases, but once the dockets go upstairs, they disappear. He says rank shields generals, so no junior can ask questions. And he says, investigating the rich and powerful makes you their enemy. Please bring him on screen.
You cannot, I've been in the SAPS, I've been an investigator. I've seen a situation whereby I crack a case. When I'm just, you know, they do a first appearance. After the first appearance, the case docket doesn't come back to you. You hear that it might be a district or it might be a province. You can never even go and question anyone. And that's a challenge for me to say, you know, organized crime, if you understand it, these people have money, these people are tendering, these people have about 500 million in their balances. They can easily buy anyone else. And we need to find a situation whereby if a case docket, let's say it's handled by PIU in Gauteng, Provincial Investigation Unit in Gauteng, let it be handled until conclusion. Not the fact that, okay, this one's in Gauteng are working, or this one's in KZN are working. Take it to somewhere national, and then this colonel or brigadier cannot question national. And from there, you'll never hear from that case.
Clearly, ethics are missing.
And now, the problem is the risk. You must know that when I come and face you, Advocate Egush, I'm also making you my enemy. It's not just about me investigating the case. I've now created enmity. Today there was a case, a bail application case. We were all on our toes to say we hope it will be denied. If it was to be granted, I'm telling you, today you'll be hearing a lot of cases, a hit.
Right.
Now,
So
this
now,
police...
Tabang, sorry to interrupt you. Are you saying
Yes.
then within the SAPS there isn't men and women who are accountable in terms of inspecting dockets? There is no one who these issues can be reported to within the SAPS who would objectively say, we've got SOPs, why are we not following the standard operating procedures in terms of docket management? When there's docket inspections, what happens?
Good question, Dorothy. It's a matter of rank. Let's say inspectorate, the department, the division is inspectorate. At each province is there. But you find that inspectorate at each province is a colonel. The dockets are required by a general. Now, you cannot find a colonel defying or questioning a general in military or paramilitary, which is the SAPS. Now, that's the problem I'm saying.
That's it. That's the system. You work hard, you crack the case, and then someone higher up swallows it whole. And the criminals, with their millions, just buy time, buy silence, buy people. And when honest officers push back, suddenly their careers, and sometimes their lives, are on the line. Now let's tie this together with the timeline. December 2024, the PKTT makes a breakthrough. Weapons linked to 4 murders. December 31st, the minister disbands the unit. March 2025, 121 dockets are handed to National. By July, the minister himself is on leave, and a commission is born. So when Mchunu said, "Wait, hear both sides," I wonder if he realized that the other side would come with this much fire. Show me that picture of Mkhwanazi again, the one in uniform. Look at his face. That's not politics. That's a man who carried secrets for too long. Let us go back to the minister's own words, because in politics, the most dangerous evidence is not what your enemies say, it is what you say yourself. He told us, we must always hear both sides of the story. Now, on the surface, that sounds like wisdom. Who would argue against fairness? But when you place that statement in the context of a task team being dissolved on the very day it produced breakthrough evidence, you start to see another meaning. Hear both sides becomes less about fairness and more about delay. It becomes a shield that buys time for cases to be moved out of the hands of those who are ready to act. He then said, nobody can be a judge, prosecutor, and investigator all at once. Again, on the surface, that sounds like a defense of the Constitution. But what does it really do in practice? It undermines investigators who are saying, we have the evidence, we can move now. It paints them as overstepping, as if they are greedy for power. Meanwhile, the real overreach is not coming from detectives on the ground. The real overreach is the minister's hand, reaching into a working unit and pulling the plug. Now listen to how the tone shifts when you put these lines next to General Mkhwanazi's testimony. He says, I went to the commissioner, I went to the minister, I went to Parliament. Every door I knocked on, nothing happened. Sentence by sentence, this is devastating. First, it shows escalation. He did not stop at one door, he went through the chain. Second, it shows persistence. He did not give up after being ignored once. Third, it shows total failure. Even Parliament, which should be the final avenue for accountability, gave him nothing. That is not a complaint. That is a structural diagnosis. And then he drops the heavier line. He says, associates of the minister, evidence of communications, evidence of involvement in decisions taken by a syndicate. Notice how carefully he phrases it. He does not say, I think, or I suspect. He says there is evidence, and he says others will testify under oath. That is how a disciplined general speaks. It is not gossip. It is a statement designed for cross-examination. Now bring in Habang Bogopha, the crime expert. He explains why these patterns are possible. He says dockets vanish once they reach the top. He says rank protects generals from being questioned. He says investigators who dare touch the powerful are treated as enemies. If you lay these words side by side with what Mkhwanazi described, they match perfectly. The general speaks of blocked doors. The expert explains why the doors are blocked. The minister speaks of patience and fairness, but in that same period, 121 dockets are moved to national, where questions cannot be asked. This is why analysis matters. If you just look at the headlines, you see a clash of personalities. But if you listen word for word, you see a system at work. The minister's words are not empty. They are procedural shields. The general's words are not complaints. They are a record of obstruction. The expert's words are not theory. They are a map of how the system has been captured. Now listen to this part, because when I heard it at the Madlanga Commission, I almost dropped my coffee. General Mkhwanazi didn't come there to play. He said, "It has been my aim to demonstrate that the criminal justice system has been subject to continuous threat, as well as sabotage, which has been with us over an extended period." Pause. Let that sink in. Continuous threat. Sabotage. He's not saying maybe corruption here and there. He's saying the system has been sabotaged for years. That's like your own police general telling you, the house has termites and we've been pretending it's fine. And then he doubles down. We believe it is at real risk of total collapse if nothing is done. Collapse. Not problems, not delays, but collapse. Guys, if you are watching this, think about what that means. The very institution that's supposed to protect you, he says it's on the edge of falling apart. How do you even continue sipping your tea after hearing that? But wait, it gets heavier. He points fingers. He says Senzo Mchunu, the very minister, is not just an observer, but part of the interference. He says Shadrach Sibia too. Now, you've got to imagine the room at that moment. You could hear a pin drop, because once you say a minister's name under oath, you are not gossiping anymore. You are declaring war. And then the detail that made me lean back in my chair. He said prosecutors, police, business people, even members of the judiciary are part of a syndicate. A whole syndicate. My jaw dropped. Because you realize this isn't just about one minister. It's about a network that runs through every branch. You mess with one, you're messing with the whole spider web. Now let's stop right there. Think back to Mchunu's own words. Nobody can be judge, prosecutor, and investigator all at once. You see the trick now? He dressed it up as constitutional wisdom. But if what Mkhwanazi is saying is true, those words were just the cover fire. A smokescreen while the files, 121 dockets, got moved upstairs. And Mkhwanazi doesn't mince words about that either. He says the PKTT was disbanded not as routine, but because it was too close to cracking the case. Think about that. You form a task team to solve killings. The task team finds guns, links them to murders, starts connecting dots, and instead of rewards, they get shut down. Tell me that's not a movie script. Then comes the kicker. He warns that investigators themselves are not safe, that the moment you dig too close to power, you become the target. Can you imagine being a detective in this climate? You chase justice, and the next day you're the one under investigation, or worse, you're looking over your shoulder on the highway. This is where I had to pause the stream and take a breath, because Mkhwanazi wasn't just giving evidence. He was lifting the curtain. He was showing us how the game is played, how cases vanish, how silence is bought, and once you hear it from him, you can't unhear it. Viewers, this is why I say keep your popcorn close, because if you think this was explosive, the next parts are dynamite. So, after hearing Mkhwanazi's bombs, you might be thinking, maybe he's exaggerating, maybe this is just one general venting. But then comes Habang Bogopha. Calm, measured, clinical. The kind of guy who doesn't need drama because the facts themselves are terrifying. He explains that when investigators chase sensitive cases, dockets mysteriously vanish once they reach the top. And when he said that, I actually laughed out loud. Not because it's funny, but because it's the kind of corruption that doesn't even hide anymore. You've got hard-working detectives collecting evidence, witnesses risking their lives, files getting compiled. Then, boom, file goes upstairs, and suddenly it's gone. Like a magician snapped his fingers. 121 dockets, poof. He says rank becomes a shield. Think about that. A constable can be grilled, a captain can be questioned, but once you hit general or minister, suddenly you are untouchable. You can't be asked anything. And it hit me. That's not a police service. That's a pyramid scheme. The higher you climb, the less accountable you become. Then Habang drops something colder. He says investigators who touch the powerful are treated as enemies. That word, enemies. Imagine being a police officer in your own country, and because you dared investigate a minister or a businessman with connections, you're suddenly on the wrong side of the law. The badge on your chest doesn't protect you anymore. It paints a target on your back. Now connect the dots. Mkhwanazi says he knocked on every door and nothing happened. Habang explains why. Because those doors are not doors, they are walls. They are designed to block, not to open. The minister says, be patient, hear both sides. But what if one side has already been gagged and the other side is the one holding the keys to the filing cabinet? That patience becomes a burial ground for cases. And here's the thing that really makes your stomach turn. Bogopar isn't an emotional speaker. He's not trying to trend on Twitter. He's giving you the mechanics, the wiring diagram of how corruption works, which is why it's so chilling. Because when the quiet expert and the angry general are describing the same machine, you know it's real. This is where, as a viewer, you've got to pause and realize. The fainting, the denials, the press conferences, they are just surface drama. The real story is structural. It's about a justice system that eats its own evidence. It's about investigators who become suspects. It's about ministers who preach patience while the files burn behind closed doors. And I don't know about you, but when I hear this, I don't just feel angry, I feel tired. Because if the very people inside the machine are telling us it's collapsing, where do we even go for safety? That's the despair Bogopar leaves you with. Quiet words, heavy weight. Bring the timeline up on my right now and put the 4 photos on the screen behind me so people can see what I am pointing to as I speak. I want the audience to feel we are standing in the room together, tracing the same marks in ink that the Commission has on its table. Look to my right. The timeline starts in July 2018 with the launch of the Political Killings Task Team. You can see that box there on the left of the board. It was an ad hoc team meant to investigate political assassinations in KwaZulu-Natal and later across the country. That is the origin story of everything that follows, because this is where momentum was supposed to live. Investigators, prosecutors working together, a focused team doing the messy job no one else wanted. That is important, because you need to remember that the PKTT was never a publicity stunt. It was built to produce results, and that matters for how the rest of the timeline feels to the people who did the work. Move your eyes a little lower and further right, and find the April 2024 block. This is where the Swart murder sits, the assassination that acted like a probe into the underworld. It is not a minor case. It is the moment when ordinary police work suddenly began to reveal a deeper architecture. Pictures of the scene and the faces of the accused are on the board. Look at them. You can see how the evidence was solid enough to bring arrests, enough to put guns on the table and forensic reports in front of prosecutors. That is the baseline of danger. This investigation had teeth. Now watch how the timeline tightens in December 2024. On the board, you can read the date December 30th. Right beside it, someone has written, in plain words, that the PKTT's ballistic analyst linked weapons seized in the Swart case to 4 other high-profile murders. That sentence on the paper is a seismic shift. For a moment, The team had leverage. They had a forensic line connecting crimes, and forensic lines do not care for PR or political convenience. They are cold, technical, and damning. So when you look at that December 30th box, you must feel the click. Investigators were finally connecting dots the way good investigators do. Now, look with me to December 31st, the very next box on the right. December 30th, breakthrough. December 31st, disbandment. That conjunction is not a small administrative punctuation. It reads like a deliberate emergency stop. It reads like someone walked into a server room and pulled the plug on a process that had become inconvenient. When I point at that on the timeline, you should be thinking not about paperwork, but about decision-making power and who benefits when a team stops working at peak momentum. Slide your gaze upwards to the early months of 2025, where the timeline shows public escalation. On January 27th, the board records that General Mkhwanazi went on television to speak out. Then further along in March, you can see his appearance before Parliament. Look at those blocks carefully. They mark a man who tried protocol, internal reports, escalations, appeals, and, when every door closed, he took his evidence to the public square. That sequence on the timeline is important because it shows method. First inside channels, then outside channels. You can tell he tried to be institutional, and only when that failed did he move to public testimony. Now I want you to focus on the cluster of entries around March and April. There is a block on March 26th and another on April 10th that together explain how 118 dockets, and then 3 more, were handed up to national control, making a total of 121. Those boxes are the spine of this whole story, because moving dockets to head office is not an administrative detail. It is the operational mechanism by which control is centralized. When you read those 2 entries on the timeline, you have to hear the mechanical click of custody changing hands. Files, evidence, chain of custody notes, all moving beyond the reach of the investigators who knew the cases best.